everyone. I hope you are getting on well. I'm back again with you on our Rupahini Guru Gedar program to teach you another lesson in your syllabus on appreciation of English literary texts. I hope this will be another interesting lesson for you, and this will help you analyze the poem as well as learn some things for your life. Okay, let's see our lesson today. Breakfast by Jacques Prevert. Okay, first of all, you can have a look at the beautiful picture I have chosen for you all. So, the topic is very clear to you, and my questions are: what does the title suggest us? What can be the place? So, here the picture tells us that it is a place where a breakfast table is laid. So, according to the poem, we are going to find the answers for these two questions. Right. The title is Breakfast. So, what is the importance of breakfast? Let's see. As usual, just before I am going to discuss the poem, I have given you some information about this writer, right? So, you can see that he is a French poet and screenwriter, born on 4th February and lived until 11th April 1977. His poems were collected and published in his books, and they were often about life in Paris and life after the Second World War. So, these points are very much important for you to think of the poem as well, because most of his poems are about life, right. Then his poems are widely used in schools in France, because he is a French poet. We will see how much he has contributed to literature and how much important his works are. His poems frequently appear in French. Of course, he has written in French, and those poems are in language textbooks published worldwide. And in America, these poems are included in upper level French classes for the students to learn basics. That means, other than learning literature, they are going to learn French through these poems. So, we can understand how much he has contributed to learn French as well through his poetry. Fine. Then we get some more other information about his poems, and they were set to music and sung by prominent French vocalists, singers. And these poems are translated into many languages worldwide. Other than that, he has written a number of screenplays for the film director Marcel Carné. So, that is why right at the beginning I told you that he is a poet as well as a screenwriter. You understand now it clearly, isn't it? Fine. Now, before I start reading the poem with you, I want you to pay attention to certain points that I have mentioned here, and you can have a look at the screen and just read what is given there. What can be this character I, the speaker, and he, the male character? It is a very important question. What type of a situation is described here in the poem? Who becomes helpless at the end? So, keep these 3 points in your mind before you start reading the poem, right. Think of it again. What can be this character I, the speaker, and he, the male character? What type of situation is described here? Who becomes helpless at the end, right. So, I think these questions even will give you a clear idea of what we are going to read in the poem, and these are the questions that I have set for you, right. So, let us read the poem. He poured coffee into his cup. He put milk in his cup of coffee. He put sugar in his cup of coffee and milk. With his teaspoon, he stirred it. He drank the coffee and milk, and he put down the cup without speaking to me. That's the first verse. Then let's read. He lit a cigarette. He made rings with the smoke. He put the ashes in the ashtray without speaking to me, without looking at me. So, the picture of course illustrates the things in the poem, but actually this is not something we should encourage, right. So, anyway that is included in the poem, and especially just because I wanted to show that, to give the meaning, really I included these two pictures, right. So, do not misunderstand, we are not promoting smoking at all, right. He got up, he put his hat on his head, he put on his raincoat because it was raining, and he went out. So, again I have chosen a picture for you to see that, right. So, he has put on his hat and raincoat, and then he was leaving. In the rain, without a word, without a look, and I put my head in my hands and wept. So, again the picture helps you get an idea about the poem, right. This is the last portion of the poem, and we will discuss these things in detail in time to come, right. So, is it clear now? Here you find two characters, the speaker I and another character, and we understand that he is a male character, right. So, what can be this character I, the speaker, and he, the male character? So, when you read this poem, I in the poem is definitely a female character, female figure, and this person, the speaker, can be his wife or the fiancé. That means that they are still not married, but hoping to marry and engaged. Then next one, he is definitely the male character. Then if the speaker is wife, definitely he should be the husband, or if the speaker is the fiancé, then the male figure or he should be fiancé, right. Clear to you the ideas? So, when we read this poem, we get this hint, and I wept. So, there the speaker is having some kind of problem. We understood it when we read the poem, and especially when we look at the visuals. So, what type of a situation is described here? It is a situation that shows a broken relationship, isn't it? Is it clear to you? So, let us see how we can find evidence to prove these things. So, anyway, when you read the poem, and especially the last 6 lines, right. So, you understand that this is something to do with a broken relationship, and the female character is suffering a lot. Right at the beginning, the first verse, first stanza tells us how he prepared his cup of tea, breakfast. So, we are going to talk about all these things in my next slides, right. We will move on. Is it clear to you the basic things that we are going to discuss in the poem? Right. What is the importance of the title? Can you remember the title now? Breakfast. Where can be the place of this incident? Under what theme is this categorized in your textbook? What is the importance of weather condition mentioned in the poem? If anyone can remember, if you do not have the book in your hand, if you remember what we read a few minutes ago, what was the weather condition given there? Yes, rain, fine, we will see. Then what is the importance of the title? Breakfast. When you hear that particular word breakfast, it tells us lot of things, right. We will see what they are. breakfast means the first meal of the day, isn't it, children? And do you know the meaning breakfast? So, after you had your dinner, until you get up in the morning and have your cup of tea with some biscuits or whatever it is, you are fasting. So, this is the first meal you are going to break that fast. So, that is why that name is their breakfast, and it is to mean that you are going to start a new day and some new hopes and kind of freshness in you, isn't it? So, all these things are there in the word breakfast, and moreover, it gives all of you, the family members, a room for maintaining healthy relations. So, it gives us an opportunity, a chance to get together and enjoy our breakfast, right. So, tasty cup of milk that mother prepares at home, right. But here the situation is different with this couple, and we will see why is that, and so what we are going to talk about it later on, right. So, now breakfast, first meal of the day, new hopes and freshness, fine. Then the possible places of this incident, that means the couple is having like cup of tea and the lady could not have her cup of tea at all. The male figure, or he did not prepare a cup of tea for her, and then where can be these two? Maybe at their home, or maybe at a restaurant, or else in a holiday bungalow. But whatever it is, even if it is a holiday bungalow or restaurant or home, right, we are going to see, or we read a kind of problem in their relationship, right. So, I have given a picture there. I have chosen it with a purpose. Every picture I include has a meaning in it. Now, here in that picture you can see a man and a woman, or a lady and a gent, and we understand that they both are having a kind of argument, or they are going to show us that they have a problem. And here you have to pay special attention to something, children, that is, just see whether how these two people, I mean the we will say husband and we will say wife, or the lady and the gent are going to behave. Are they going to talk? Are they going to fight? So, the picture, or quite opposite it, are we going to see in the poem, right. So, let us read the poem, the lines again to understand the poem. And can any one of you think, or do you know the theme of this poem? It is given under the conflicts, right, categorized in your book, and the theme of breach in relationships, because broken relationship I told you. And my question is their life free of conflicts? Now, think of you with your sisters and brothers, even you have some disputes, conflicts, but soon we are going to be friendly again. We are not going to keep it forever in our minds, right. So, but we can't find a life free of conflicts, children. But only thing is, we have to sort them out very carefully and very intelligently. Otherwise, it will be something else. So, my next slide is going to show you the things that I am going to discuss about that. What can conflicts do really? So, I was talking about it. It is an agent of displeasure. You lose your happiness, and it conflicts destroy peace and joy in life. Do you agree? So, when you fight with someone, or when you have some kind of problem with another character, do you have peace in your mind? Can you enjoy life? I don't think. So, conflicts really destroy peace and joy in life. It is evident in these two people as well, right? So, we will see. At the same time, conflicts bring negative and harmful effects. Harmful, of course. Apart from that, just after a conflict, if it is going to be something long lasting conflict, it brings loneliness, isolation, unhappiness, stress and misery as well. Do you agree? So, all these words are very familiar to you. Loneliness, isolation, unhappiness, stress and misery can be the results of the conflicts, because that is why I told you it brings some negative or harmful effects. The idea is clear to you, I hope. All right. So, I am going to ask you some more other questions. What can you say about the structure of the poem? So, here this I think this question is very important to understand this poem very well, and there is a particular structure. I ask you to read the lines in your textbook if you have the book with you right at the moment, or else wait for a few minutes, then you will be able to see this structure. But to find answers for this question, definitely you have to go through the lines of your textbook, right. So, my first question is, under this structure, how many stanzas are there in the poem? What can you say about length of each stanza? So, quickly run through the lines and see and check about the length of the stanzas. Are there similar lines in each stanza? And note down how the lines are written, right. So, I will give you a few minutes. Before I start discussing this with you all, you should find some answers, right. How many stanzas are there? It is very easy, you can count it. What can you say about the length of each stanza? So, you have to count the number of lines in each stanza for that. Are there similar lines in each? Yes. So, length means that the similar lines in each. Note down how the lines are written. The writer has used a particular way of writing lines. So, try to catch it up, try to note it, right. Okay, we will move on. There are 3 stanzas. The middle one is shorter, so that it shows there are the lines and the length of the poem in each verse is different, right. The lines in each stanza are not similar. One of my questions was, are there similar lines in each stanza? No, lines in each stanza are not similar. In each stanza, the first line is in the middle. So, did any one of you notice it? If you did so, you are really good. So, you know how to look at the structure of the poem very well, right. So, in each stanza, the first line is in the middle. What does that line indicate? So, now quickly go through those 3 lines written in the middle and think of an answer. What does that line indicate? Then, how do you think it is important? Why has the writer written the first line of each stanza in that way? So, what is the importance of it? So, that is my question, right. So, then we will see. Each first line indicates a different action of the male character. Clear to you? His actions are important to the speaker. Next one. Only his behavior can change the entire story. So, we can see the action of this particular character, he or the man, as a changing agent. right. So, his behavior can change the story and take the story to a different direction. We will see why. The speaker is presented as a silent observer, right. So, the speaker, the character I, we identified that character as a female character, and then that lady or she is presented as a silent observer. Did you notice it? It is very clearly indicated throughout the poem until you meet the last 6 lines, right. What idea is conveyed in the first stanza? The entire stanza is devoted to explain how he prepared his tea. So, see the words that I have highlighted. He prepared his tea. Repetition of this word his is there until you read up to the last 6 lines, right. It is very important to get the meaning of this poem. Did you notice it when you read, or when I was reading the poem for you, that word his is repeated, and every step that he takes in preparing his cup of tea is carefully and silently observed by the speaker. She is not going to show any kind of reaction. What she does is just observing everything, right. So, that is also to show some kind of characteristics in her, and then the entire stanza is devoted to explain how he prepared his tea, means that he has ignored this lady. Don't you think so? She pretends that he is totally engrossed or totally engaged in what he does. He does not show any interest, any care for this lady, though she may be sitting opposite him or close to him, next to him, right. Sometimes, most probably in opposite directions, right. Then let us read it. Now, with all these ideas in your mind, please read repetition of the word his, and how he prepares his cup of tea, and how that lady is going to observe him. So, I discuss all these things, and now let us have a look at the lines of the poem again. He poured coffee. Now, did you see that is somewhere away from the rest of the lines? He poured coffee into his cup. He put milk in his cup of coffee. Now, there are two things, right, coffee and milk. Then he put sugar in his cup of coffee and milk. With his teaspoon, he stirred it. So, most probably when tea is served at a restaurant or a hotel, sometimes at home even, there can be separate spoons for each cup. So, he has used his teaspoon to stir his cup of tea. So, with this line, we can just say that most probably they too must be at a restaurant or a hotel, right, rather than at home. So, certain family setups are different. So, sometimes even in their breakfast table at home, they might have had these things separately, like in a hotel, right. So, he drank the coffee and milk, and he put down the cup without speaking to me. So, after observing all these steps, how he prepared the cup of tea, what the lady felt most is, or what she feels most is, that person is not speaking to her. So, it indirectly suggests us, certain things. Do you think so? So, that line is very important, without speaking to me. So, she feels that that person has ignored her. Other than that, what can we say about the attitude of the male character or the person known here as he, right? Yes. Then without speaking to me, let us see, I have written some ideas for you, but before I show that to you, can you please think of some answers without speaking to me? Yes, what type of ideas are conveyed in that line? Let us see. It indicates that the man does not pay any attention to the speaker, does not seek her assistance or wait for her to prepare his tea. It shows his independence as well, isn't it? Now, he is capable of, or he can prepare his own cup of tea. So, ignores her presence as well. So, without speaking to me. So, that is why I told you right at the beginning, breakfast table of course gives a room for others to open up a conversation, discussion and start the day happily, right. So, some freshness is there, but for this couple it is not so, because the man has neglected or ignored the presence of this lady. And preparing his cup of tea of course all alone shows his independence, at the same time lack of concern for the speaker, and hints the problematic situation in their relationship, because the lady is waiting, anxiously waiting, earnestly waiting, observing or watching what the man does. Throughout that period she is silent, right, she is silent and observing. So, this silence and the last line, without speaking to me, definitely hints us that they have a problem. That is why they have stopped talking, their communication is barred, they do not have communication, right, fine. The idea is clear to you children. Let us see what is there on the other slide. Without speaking to me, what does this line tell you? Hints that they have a problem. The idea that he does not want to initiate a conversation as well. The requirement of the speaker to talk with him is also there. So, without speaking to me, so that means she is eagerly or anxiously waiting till he speaks. So, it shows this lady needs his attention, but that person does not do so. The absence of cheerful beginning of the day as well. So, when it comes to the beginning of another day, so this is going to be somewhat unhappy, gloomy morning for these two, not because the environment is gloomy, but in their thoughts they are not happy, right. I think you got the idea. The absence of cheerful beginning of the day. The breakfast that you are going to have is something important in many aspects, right. One is the first meal and the beginning of the day, fine. What purpose does the second stanza serve? So, just before we read the second stanza, find some answers for these questions. What purpose does the second stanza serve? So, when it comes to second stanza, when we read it, we get a kind of suspense in our mind as readers, what is going to happen next, right. At the same time, the actions of the character he, lighting the cigarette, making rings, putting ashes in the ashtray, are the things that are described in that particular stanza. So, what is the importance of this? What is the purpose of this second stanza? It may be a kind of indication of his loneliness too, because now he is smoking, making rings. So, maybe to show his loneliness, or else to impress the lady of his unconcern of her, because he is not going to show any respect or regard for her presence. He is not going to pay attention to her. So, just smoking, Right. What else can be there? We will read the second stanza and half of the third stanza. He lit, again note down the position or the place of the first line of the second stanza. Once again it is somewhere there in the middle like. He lit a cigarette, he made rings with the smoke, he put the ashes in the ashtray without speaking to me, without looking at me. Those two lines are very important. I have highlighted. They are again the lady, this female character, the speaker of the poem, tells us that she needs the attention of this man. That is why she says, without speaking to me, without looking at me. So children, at the same time, what is the literary device that you can find there? Without speaking to me, without looking at me, there's repetition to confirm the idea, emphasize the idea, right? All right. So, is everything clear to you up to now? Right? He got up. He put his hat on his head. He put on his raincoat because it was raining, and he went out. So, I told you, right, somewhere when I was explaining that weather condition is also something that we have to discuss here. The writer has given us a weather condition. It is raining, and in that rain he went out. How did he go out? He put on his raincoat, he put on his hat. Why? To protect himself, isn't it? Right? So, to avoid raindrops falling onto his body. But he, of course, in this rain even leaving her. What does it tell us? Yes? Can you think of some answers for these questions? Right. So, is it clear to you? Why did this person leave her even in this rain? And this idea of rain at this particular moment is also very important, because I think in the poem it gives us a deeper meaning other than the word raining, right? So, we will see what it is, children. Fine. Why is the idea of rain significant here? It facilitates them to start up a conversation, as it prevents them going out. Both of them can't go out because it is raining. But think of the man's reaction, right? So, leaving the place is somewhat difficult for them. The rain is there. Or we can consider this rain as a kind of trap. They were trapped inside the building. They too can't go out, right? At the same time, that trap that is persistent in their conflict, because that is a conflict situation and they are trapped in that. So, their conflict also there, right? So, did you understand what I tried to explain? The rain facilitates in a way for them to start up a conversation, because we think both of them can't go out in the rain. At the same time, rain can be taken as a trap. Why? Because they are trapped inside the building. The same idea that I told you in the first point, right? So, then again they are trapped inside the building, other than their persistent conflict, that is also trap. Does the weather affect the speaker's partner? How can we notice it? This weather did not affect him. No, rain doesn't affect him. In the rain he went out. Remember that, children. So, cap and raincoat, as I told you earlier, gives him a kind of warmth in that cold weather. When the rain pours down, of course, the temperature goes down and it becomes cold around, isn't it? Then after that, it gives him a kind of protection against rain, and he is comfortable in his cap and raincoat, and then he finds a way out. So, this going out in the rain suggests us, yes, what does it suggest? Can you think of? Yes, it suggests us that the man does not want to stay there or to stay with this lady sometimes, because he finds his way out. So, in that smoking also, sometimes one can say that he was scheming or he was planning, or it is to show his kind of internal conflicts or his thoughts that were working in his mind while smoking. He could have been in a pensive mood to think of this situation and that decisions that he can take. It may be that, right. So, anyway, going out in the rain with his cap and raincoat suggests that he finds comfortable enough to be in the rain with the help of cap and raincoat, and again it is a kind of finding a way out. So, we as readers clearly understand this man is going to leave this lady behind. He is not taking her. He is not going to maintain that relationship anymore, like, right. So, we can't exactly say, but that he leaves her at the moment in the rain. Fine. Then what is the reaction of the lady? Still she is observing. She does not utter a single word. She does not do anything. So, it shows her character, depth of her character really, children, and certain ideas about her character as well. In the rain, without a word, without a look. Again, look at the repetition. Without a word, without a look. That suggests us that she was waiting for him to look at her, to pay some kind of attention. So, if you faced such a situation, how much you would feel, right. So, without a word, without a look, if somebody is leaving you. So, it hints us that that person no more wants you, right. And I put my head in my hands and wept. It shows her extreme loneliness and helplessness. When we are extremely sad, what we are going to do? We are going to weep, and we keep our head in our hands, and then we are going to weep. Her extreme helplessness and suffering. This particular set of lines are highly emotional. We feel really sorry for her. It evokes sympathy of the reader towards the female character or the speaker or she here. And then we have empathy. If we had to face such a situation, how would we feel? So, there is empathy in us as readers. At the same time, we feel very sorry, so that is, we call it as pathos, right. So, we have a lot of sympathetic feelings towards her, right. Then, do you think that end of this poem is something that we can be happy? No, never at all. So, that suggests a kind of loneliness for the lady and her suffering in life or agony in life, right. How do you feel about the speaker? Yes, we feel sympathetic about her, we feel sorry about her. At the same time, we understand that she is helpless and totally she was ignored by this man. So, we can notice other than these things that she is suppressing her feelings. Children, now we are going to discuss certain ideas that are deeper in sense other than that something that we feel right after hearing all these things, right. So, suppressing her feelings of disappointment, her despair. She is frustrated about what happened, because without speaking to me, without looking at me, without a word, without a look, all these things suggest that she lost all her hopes to have a kind of communication with him. He did not talk, he did not look at her. So, she is utterly in despair, and her agony, her pain, right. She is suppressing all these things and she is just observing. Now, can you remember the picture I told you that a lady and a man, of course, there was some red color lines to show that they are angry or they are having kind of a heated argument, we will say. So, but all these things are absent here in this poem with this couple, right? So, they two were extremely silent. Man didn't speak, the lady didn't speak. Yes, that silence, what does it tell us? Observing with growing impatience. Of course, we know that lady was observing everything with growing impatience. That is why she says that she was waiting. Oh, next moment he will speak. Okay, now he's doing this, now next moment. But at the end, without a look, without a word, he went away. Doesn't show any aggressive behavior. That's why I was telling you, she was extremely silent, and that shows her depth of character, her qualities, right? So, at the same time that her silence indicates that she really loves this man and does not want to turn that love to hatred. If she shouts, if she shows some kind of angry, aggressive reaction, right? So, it is not love anymore, it is kind of hatred. But she nicely maintained that silence, suppressing all her worries, disappointment, despair, agony and pain and everything, but did not turn her love to hatred. Now, think of her. So, she is really a great character in that way. Don't you think so? So, we understand that really that man did something wrong, or he was some kind of rude person, right? So, do you think that he also didn't feel this? Are there any lines in the poem that we can say so? And is it fair to say that that man was rude and man was totally neglecting this way? We will see. Who seems to suffer most, children, anyway? And why? And how do you feel so? I need you to get some ideas with the lines in the poem. It is evident, it is very clear that the lady, the speaker, suffers most, because she is the one who weeps, as we understand, because we read the lines, right? So, sometimes man may not feel any of these things how this lady felt, because he was not looking at her, he was not talking to her. The last 6 lines of the 3rd stanza suggest her pain and agony, her loneliness, her helplessness, and still she shows calm response with her silent weeping. Calm response with her silent weeping. Those are very important ideas that we can get when we interpret the poem with the words in the poem, right, with the lines in the poem. The repetition and everything shows that man leaving her in the rain. So, she is definitely going to be lonely, and there is kind of separation, and therefore, she is very helpless, right? Fine. Don't you think man too has his own way of suffering, children? He was also silent, he was mocking, he was moving out in the rain, right? So, we will take these 3 things. His silence, yes, what can his silence indicate? Yes, it may be his pain too, or else remember that he was very much careful not to take any notice of the lady, right? He was silent, and he was pretending throughout the time to be fully devoted to whatever he does. When he was preparing the cup of tea, it was the same. When he was moving out also, the lady says, without a look, without a word. Oh, he was pretending that he was totally engaged in whatever he does, right? So, I think idea is clear to you. In his silence, these things were also there, right? Then, smoking. Smoking, of course, can indicate his internal scheming, making decisions with regard to their relationship sometimes, because he is in a pensive mood, thinking of, and while thinking, he may be smoking. Then walking out in the rain, I explained that part very well, I hope. Moving away from her is very clearly shown there, walking out in the rain, leaving her in that place. Then finding his freedom, isn't it? Moving away from this lady and looking for finding his own freedom, separation, making himself comfortable, right? So, inside the building, the rain was a kind of trap for him. So, he moved out. So, it indicates that he wanted to find his own freedom, separation and kind of comforts in his mind being away from her. Fine. So, that suggests us that relationship has not been a very much cheerful, positive one. Some problematic conflict situation in between them. We do know the reason, right? But anyway, that is to talk about this psychological aspect of the man as well. Themes in the poem. So, these are something that you have to remember when you are going to answer context questions, as well as when you are going to write essay type questions. That is something to do with your test paper. But anyway, children, up to now, when you study this poem, when you pay your attention to this poem, what did you understand? So, as humans, we all have our own weaknesses, problems, right? Silence has stopped very aggressive conflict situation, making it worse. So, silence is gold. So, let the time sort out everything. So, to be patient, just like this lady did, tolerate everything, anxiously, eagerly waiting, suppressing, right? Anxiously, eagerly waiting, suppressing her disappointment, despair. She loved him really, and that true love, of course, was there because she was suffering within or suffering inside, but she didn't show it to him without turning her love to hatred. So, in life, if we can maintain relationships like this, I mean conflict situation, separation, everything, without making it very much unpleasant, and sometimes the time may help us to sort out these things, isn't it? So, it gives some lessons for your life, of course. And then the theme, of course, breach in mutual relationships leads to conflict situations. I will read it again. Breach in mutual relationships leads to conflict situation. That was shown in the poem, right? Breach, break in relationship. Then at the end, conflict situation. They two were not together. That man left her, right? So, then no more that she is going to meet this man is suggested, but we do not know how long, how far, right? Anyway, it indicates a kind of separation. So, in general we can say breach in mutual relationships leads to conflict situation. Actually, this man leaving out in the rain and finding way out, trying to comfort himself, leaving her, suggests us that he does not have any idea to come back to her. So, definitely it is a conflict situation for this lady and also for the man, because he too must be suffering. We do not know. Anyway, this is a psychological problem, as well as it shows psychological distance that such relations create. You can see that I was telling you that they two might have sit next to each other or opposite direction, but still, though they were close in their physical presence, they two were in two other worlds in their mind, especially the man, because he had kind of distant relationship with the lady. Fine. I think what I wanted to say is clear to you, right? Don't misinterpret or misunderstand, just try to get at the right thing, right? So, then techniques. Powerful visual imagery. So, throughout the poem, we get some events, and the pictures we get in our mind related to all these events are very powerful to create even dramatic effect. So, I am going to talk about that. Then I was over and over again telling you that we find the technique of repetition, especially the word his, without speaking, without looking at me, without a word, without a look, without, right, repeated emphasis that he was totally absent of all these things, right. Then I put my head in my hand. So, there repeated I shows that she is all alone, no more that person is there to comfort her or to weep together with her, her loneliness. So, enchantment, this word may be new, but I know I told you this, run on lines. Now, that is why I told you to study the structure of this poem specially. So, here in this poem, sentences are broken to separate short phrases. Now, just read your book and see what I say is clear to you, because the sentences are broken into short phrases, and then to get the meaning of whole thing, you have to read one line and the next line as well. Together they make sense, right. So, that is known as enchantment or run on lines. And what is the purpose of writer using this particular technique, breaking the sentences into short phrases? Yes, can you think of a possible answer? Can you think of the reason for such division or the separation of one sentence into different parts? Yes, children, it highlights the growing impatience and mental unrest that it leads to, which they both hide in deliberate silence. So, they were hiding their growing impatience, growing mental unrest, right. They both were hiding that in their deliberate silence, but that short broken sentences show that tension that is growing in their mind, the impatience that is growing in their mind. I think the idea is clear to you, right. So, what can be my next point? Can you think of some other techniques that you found in the poem other than powerful visual imagery, repetition, run on lines or enchantment? Yes, let us see. Your answer is right. So, dramatic presentation. What do you mean by dramatic presentation? So, just like we feel that they too are there, we also partly involved in this, right. The visual imagery that we have in our mind shows what each person does, especially when it describes how he prepares his cup of tea, adding coffee, milk, sugar, everything. So, we get each time a picture in our mind like in a drama, right. So, that is known as dramatic presentation. Is it clear to you what I said, right. So, when we read each line, we get a mental picture or we visualize that particular action like we are watching a drama. So, that is why we call it as dramatic presentation. So, we do not hear they are talking, but here we see their actions. Now, in certain poems, in certain situations, of course, we take this dramatic presentation with what they say, dialogues and all, right. So, when it comes to Lumber Room, we hear the dialogues between Aunt and Nicholas, and when we study the poem, the terrorist is watching again, the language used there in continuous form. We told that we get some pictures and we hear certain things. Then what happens? We have this dramatic effect, right. The tone of the poem, right. So, we see that he is not taking the side of any of the two characters. He is objectively presenting the idea. So, that is a kind of like impartial and neutral tone in the poem. Then after that, we find the form of the poem as a free verse, right. So, I think all what I taught you here gives you a clear idea of this poem, and answer some context questions and essay type questions, as well as it teaches you some lessons for life. Children, I think it's time for me to stop the lesson for the day because I have discussed everything. So, I am going to meet you again with another interesting lesson like this next time. Till that time, stay safe. Goodbye to all of you.